Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the History of the Black Community in Hudson. I'm Brenda Schufelt, and I'm the History Room Coordinator. I'm joined tonight by Tracy Robinson, who's our Program Director, and Emily Chameides, who's our Library Director, and she is celebrating her 10th year as Director of the Hudson Area Library, just mentioning that. And the panelists that are joining us for the discussion tonight are Quintin Cross and Tiffany Gerriga. The library has a history room dedicated to preserving and making accessible the history of Hudson, Greenport, and Stockport, which are our library service areas. And to learn more about our collections, which we have a lot of, visit our new history room website, which Tracy will put in the chat now. And I want to mention before we begin that on this website, we have a lot of images from this particular collection. There weren't just oral histories, but there were also images, and we have those. So we are very excited and proud to have the Black Legacy Association of Columbia County Collection, BLACC, as part of our archives now. And tonight we are sharing excerpts from the oral histories in this collection that were gathered in the late 1980s by members of the Columbia County Retired Senior Volunteer Program, known as RSVP, sponsored by Columbia Opportunities and conducted in collaboration with the Black Legacy Association, which was composed of several community organizations, including RSVP, the Black Ministers Alliance, the County Museum, the NAACP, Columbia Preservation, Columbia Green Community College, and the Minority Alliance at the college. The oral histories were part of a broad-based research project that, as I said, was done in the 1980s, which sought to reveal the contributions made by the Black community from colonial times to the present. In the words of Ms. Marcella Beagle, the RSVP director, as quoted in an article about the project, "The hope is that there will result a legacy to which all in the county can relate, a way of creating respect for the contributions this group made in Columbia County and New York State, and enriching and making more complete and honest our national history." The individuals who were interviewed as part of this project were Ella Barksdale, Calvin Cobbins Kerr, Jesse Cooper, Bernice and Edward Columbus Cross Jr., Helen Dago, Cora Harper, James Kerr, Mary Lewis, Ethel Lovelace, Julia Minisee, Marie Parker, Otelia Rainier, Leslie Stiles, Marion Vaness, Selma and William Randolph Vaness, and Beulah Whitbeck. In addition to the oral history project, the volunteers also read, scanned, took notes, and transcribed stories and articles of interest to the Black history of Columbia County from local newspapers of the early 1800s. All of these efforts led to the publication of a curriculum guide developed by the Cooperstown graduate program titled "Been Laborin' Here All These Long Years and Fruits of Our Labors, African American History and Culture in Columbia County, New York." And that's a K-12 curriculum guide with lessons, and it has the specific local history, which is really exciting. Emily will tell you more about how we obtained this collection and are making it accessible to the public. But first, I just want to say that I'm enormously grateful to Emily, Quintin, and Tiffany for recognizing the importance of this collection and for working with Tina Sharp, Executive Director of Columbia Opportunities, where it began, to bring the collection to the library where it could be known by the public. This has been a true labor of love and foresight on all of their parts, and I thank them. And really, I think by the end of this evening, you will thank them too, because it could be a collection that nobody ever knew existed. So I'm very grateful to the three people that are going to be speaking tonight, that they got that collection to the library and it's now being accessible. So Emily.
All right. Thanks, Brenda. And thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the special collection came to be a part of our History Room archives and what we've done and are still working on to make the information collected by the Black Legacy Association of Columbia County and RSVP volunteers accessible to the public. So I first learned of this project and collection from Quintin back in 2014, when he approached me with the idea of the library helping to preserve and make the collection accessible to the community. We then met with Tina Sharp from Columbia Opportunities and were able to get an overall sense of the size and scope of the collection. And there was an interest from all parties in making this transfer happen, but it didn't happen right away. So jump forward a few years to 2018, Tiffany Gerriga, who was at that time on the board of directors for Columbia Opportunities, reached out to let me know that the organization was not just interested in transferring the collection, but we're now ready to make it happen now that the library had settled into our new space and had a growing and accessible history room. So with help from Tiffany and Malachi Walker, who I'm not sure if he's joined us tonight, I know he signed up, but we loaded up the boxes of videos, audio cassettes, and documents and brought them to the library. Then later that same year, in collaboration with Suzanne Snyder of Oral History Summer School, and I think Suzanne is here tonight too, we applied for and were awarded a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services for a community memory project to create interplay between this special collection, the library's oral history collection, and Oral History Summer School collection. We are very grateful to IMLS for their support of our project, as well as to WILS, our mentor organization through the grant program, and to Oral History Summer School for their ongoing partnership. So since receiving the funding through the IMLS grant, we have been able to do a number of things to get the Black Legacy Association of Columbia County collection ready for public access. So first, archivist Marie O'Toole arranged the collection in archival quality folders and boxes. She also created a finding aid for use by researchers to help understand and navigate the collection. We digitized the video cassettes and audio files for the oral histories. And I want to offer a quick thank you to Keith from Bindlestad Family Circus for lending equipment for the audio transfers. Then in February of 2020, just before everything shut down with the pandemic, we held an oral history summary writing workshop with Suzanne Snyder, where community members learned how to create short descriptions of oral history recordings while creating summaries for some of the oral histories in this collection. And I know some of the participants from that workshop are here tonight as well. Then taking off from there, library team members, including Lori Sussman, Brenda Schufelt, have further supported summary writing for the collection. And now our new intern from Columbia Green, Hallie, is reviewing the various documents in the collection. And she's finding lots of fascinating stories that we will scan and share in the future through the website and social media. Still in the works is the website for the collection. We are hoping to launch this in the coming month, and we will be sure to send an email to all attendees when the site is live. And we can't wait to share the oral histories in this collection in full, but we are equally excited to share some segments from the collection this evening. But before we dive in, I want to note just how honored and grateful everyone who has had the opportunity to work with this collection has felt to hear these oral histories and to learn from the stories and experiences shared as part of this project. We're grateful to everyone who worked on the project back in the 1980s, especially to those who shared their stories, and to Marcella Beagle, the RSVP director. We're grateful to Columbia Opportunities for their support of the project and for entrusting the library with the stewardship of this collection. And we're grateful to Quintin and Tiffany for believing in the library and advocating for us to take care of this collection and share it with the community. So now I'm pleased to introduce Tiffany Gerriga and Quintin Cross, who we are honored to collaborate with on this and other programs and initiatives. So first I'll introduce Tiffany. So Tiffany Gerriga served for many years as the City of Hudson Alderwoman of the 2nd Ward, as well as Majority Leader of the Common Council. She is business owner of Moisturize Me, founder and executive director of Black Entrepreneur Market, vice chair of the nonprofit It Could Happen to You, and co-founder of the Hudson Catskill Housing Coalition. I also want to thank Tiffany for helping select segments to share for this evening's event. And Quintin Cross was the founder and executive director of SBK Social Justice Center. He's a founding board member of the Hudson Catskill Housing Coalition. He was the youngest member ever elected to the city council in Hudson, New York, rising to the position of majority leader. And he founded the Hudson African American Leadership Alliance. And then in 2016, joined the board of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So we're really pleased to have them both with us tonight. And we're going to ask them to just talk for a little bit about their thoughts on this collection, this project from the 1980s, and the value it has either for them as an individual or for the community as a whole.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you all for being here tonight. It was an honor for me particularly to be a part of this project and learn about the families that have been in Hudson for so many years and generations. So as I learned about Hudson and entered the city of Hudson, I began to meet some of the family members of, later on generations of the people that we are going to see tonight. It's a beautiful thing to collect. From years ago, we had large photo albums that we would always continue to look at years and years, and just to have a video collection to hear your loved ones' voices and their stories, and just seeing their surroundings, the styles and like glasses and hairstyles and things of that nature. It was beautiful to hear and see how the community has changed. And it's also interesting to see how so many things are still the same. And hopefully you'll get a chance to see that tonight with the video clips that were chosen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to take this moment to center my ancestors, many of which are a part of this, my great-grandmother, Leslie Stiles, and my grandparents, Bernice Stiles Cross and Edward C. Cross. Just grateful. It's not every day you're able to hear. To hear the voices of your family, to remember a time. Like my great-grandmother, Leslie Stiles, one day you're gonna hear from her, and died when she was 101. So we my niece was born when she passed, right? And to hear their story of migration here, to just make a caveat that my uncle was one of the founders of the BLACC collaborative, Reverend Vernon Cross, to just know the role, Black and melanated people played in the city, and we don't want to forget that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Tiffany and Quintin and Emily. So we're going to start hearing some clips from the oral histories. We're going to hear 5 people of the 17 people that were interviewed. The full audio collection and many images and documents, as Emily said, will be on our BLACC collection, BLACC, Black Legacy Association of Columbia County Collection website that's going to be launched in the next month. And so we have 5 clips. The first one is Marie Parker. She was interviewed on March 9th, 1987 by Grace Schwartzman. Ms. Parker moved from Maryland in her 20s and lived with her husband, who worked as a gardener and a chauffeur on Mount Marino until they moved to a house in Hudson. So we'll hear that video now.
It's really beautiful. Now, see the man next door, and Mrs. Cooper up here, and myself. I think we're the only ones that own our homes on this street, this block.
Only Black people.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, down on the corner, Forbes. There's another one, Forbes, right down here on the corner, Fifth and Warren. We're the only 4.
Do you remember how many people did you know, Black people that owned their homes back in the 30s? Not many.
Not too many, but they had these places. But of course, and they, but down on Columbus Street was the place where they used to live on down, and Robinson Street. Robinson Street, I think it was this street right down from our church.
Mm-hmm.
That's all been turned around now. They've got all new buildings, all down. Have you seen the new buildings they've had down on Front Street?
Mm-hmm.
Down from our church on down,
Mm-hmm.
right around the corner. Yeah.
Style of court.
Yes, yeah. Chapel Street used to be Chapel Street. There was a lot of colored people lived there on that
Chapel
street.
Street.
Yeah,
I've heard about that.
Yes, so they tore all those houses down and they just build new homes. So everybody's buying it, and then the people just getting out buying in different places.
Mm-hmm.
They're going different places, different streets.
Do you have any children?
No, no children. No.
What did you eat back? Same thing? Do they cook the same thing? Or,
Well, now
food change.
Yes,
The prices have changed.
oh yes, the prices change, and the food has changed too because now you don't eat all those. You used to, then you didn't consider what you were eating. I mean, like to do now, you can't eat this, you can't eat this. It's fat and too much. This is not to eat this and not to eat that. But now those days, you just ate what you wanted. And we were talking the other day about the doctors. Now we never know what it was to have go to a doctor.
Any black doctors that you can remember?
Yeah, we had a doctor here, but Dr. Pierce. So he was here. He lived down on 2nd Street. And then he moved back down to Newburgh, down below Newburgh, there's someplace.
Mm-hmm.
But I think then since he's died. Yeah.
So only one black doctor here?
I think Dr. Pierce was the only one. Yes. He was the
Did
only
you see
one.
children, everybody, or just...
Yes. No, he didn't have no children. No.
Did he go house to house, or did you have to go to his office?
He had to go to his office.
Calls?
He had to go to his office. Mm-hmm.
He didn't make house calls at all?
No. Yes, I think he did. Yes, he did. He did. Because he was young, he was young. Yes, he did.
What about nurses? Any black nurses or midwives? Were there any midwives here in Hudson?
Yes. Mrs. Down here at 433, Mrs. Pod, she was a nurse. She worked at the hospital. And now there's 2 or 3, I think, up there now at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them going by in the afternoon, going home. And they live down, I think, in the next block, 400 block.
What about women that had children? Were there a lot of, how can I put it, childbirth tragedies?
Well, I don't know of any tragedies, but we have some
problems.
There's a lot of children. I mean, one family, one girl is Mrs. Cross. She has 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, little, cute, all boys. No girls, all boys. They're cute, like little stair steps.
Were families bigger back then? Did they have more children?
I think they were. Because nowadays more younger people are having children. You see, more younger people. It's a shame. I see them sometime on the street, young girls. Oh, Lord have mercy. And I know, especially when they're smoking a cigarette and handing it to one to the other one, Lord. I said, they don't know what they're getting into. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't know who to trust.
Not at all.
And the people, you can't keep up with them. You don't know where they are.
What about fishing? Was there a lot of fishing?
Oh,
back then?
yes. Oh, yes. This man across here, this neighbor across the street, he's probably going now. He goes out, takes his, he's got a thing to swirl around in the ice, and he goes down and gets these and catches them. He goes every day, fishes through the ice. Neighbor across the street here. And, but they used to do it an awful lot. Then there used to be ice. They used to get ice off the river. That's how they filled the ice houses.
Really?
You didn't have no ice boxes. Sure, they used to go right down here and cut the ice on the river.
Wow.
They did. They really did. Yes.
That's how everybody kept their...
Yes. When we first moved up here, the first year, we walked across the Hudson River. 5 of us. Because we wanted to show the people. We walked across the Hudson River. We did. And I got pictures of it. And then I sent them back down to Maryland so they could see it. It was 32 below. 32 below zero. And
what y'all doing walking across the river?
to show the people that we could walk across the Hudson River. Because we didn't have the bridge then. See?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get to Catskill, you had to go
across the river?
Go to Albany, then come down.
Oh, really?
To get to Catskill.
Wow.
Yes. Yes, that's the truth. It was 1932. We walked across the Hudson River. Yeah, my husband and my 3 brothers and I. My 2 brothers and I. Yes, sir. I took pictures of it. Yes, sir.
What about transportation here back in the 30s? Was there any city transportation? Or how did people really get around?
There used to be a trolley car. There used to be a trolley car, but I don't know where it ran. I think they took the tracks out. You know, it used to be up on Warren Street. Those tracks I think they were taken out.
How much did it cost to pay?
I really don't know. I think it was 5 or 10 cents maybe.
Wow.
Yes, sir. My goodness. Yes, sir. And then we used to have snow. We have snow in the fall. It would last clean up till spring.
Really?
Yes. This snow we've got now, we didn't have no snow. We haven't had no snow like this for about 8 or 10 years. I mean, to be out in my backyard, it's that deep some places now. Yes.
Were there any street lights?
Yeah, but they was different. They were different. They were different lights. You know, I don't know whether I think they would have to light. I don't know. I think they have to light them. They were different. You know what I mean? To what they are now. Now they come on automatically. You know, but they used to climb up there and light them.
Really?
Yeah, I think I did.
That was interesting.
Oh, yes.
What about the streets? You know,
Yes. Well, the streets were different. The streets were more like brick. You know, they were brick about like that.
A lot of black people worked at the brick place, didn't they?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We did have a brickyard here. Yeah, right down here on Front Street. There was a brickyard.
Did you know a lot of black people worked down there?
No, I didn't know them. I didn't know any of them.
And I've heard different people talk about
Yes.
Yeah,
There was a brickyard. Yes, there was a brickyard. Then an ice house. They had an ice house. A man would come deliver ice, just like now. He would deliver it every day. You know, to people. You could see him carrying this ice.
How much did it cost?
I don't remember, to tell you the truth now, what it cost. But they used to deliver ice, and that ice would last where they had it. Would last until all summer.
Where'd you put it?
They had ice houses. They had, they built this thing like underground, like, and with a cover over it, But that's how they kept this place. And they had to put on heavy clothes to work in there. The men would have to wear, heavy underwear and shoes and boots and things to work in this place because it was so cold. But in order to keep it, to keep it, because that's the only way they had to keep the refrigerator. They didn't have no ice boxes.
So how'd you keep your food cold? Just
in this ice box. You put this great big piece and get this ice and put it in this ice box. It was a regular your machine wasn't a regular refrigerator. It was a regular ice box. Then you put your food around it, and that's how they kept it.
What about stoves?
Had them old-fashioned stoves. Yeah, I got a burn on my leg now where I fell up against the stove, and my brother was pulling me. He said, "Come on, sister, I'll take you for a ride." So yeah, I got up. It was an oven door, the old-fashioned stove. And of course, when I got up on this thing, it wobbled, and I went over, and then I got that great big burn. I got a scar there about that wide on my leg from taking me for a ride. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Childhood diseases. I know they have vaccines for now. What about in the 30s? Were there any vaccines like, chicken pox?
Chicken pox, yes, and measles, yes, mumps, and sore throat. That's what I had. That's what I've been having. And then this thing went down my neck. But you didn't see so many children. I mean, so many people sick as they are today.
Really?
No, you didn't. No, sir. And now, because we lived in the country. When we lived in Maryland, we lived out in the country. And the only time you went to a doctor, it was when it was an emergency or something like that. They would take you. You would have to go dry there, But now everything, go to emergency. It's to me, it's nothing but a racket. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's all it is. My gracious.
Do you know any medications? A lot of older people have their own remedies.
Oh, yes. My hairdresser sent me over something to put rub down on my neck. And the doctor told me this medicine to give me, if it wasn't no better than a couple of days, to call him. So she gave me this stuff that she mixed up. And it's a liniment. I used it last night for the first, and then I keep heat on it. And so, I had turned that off. So, but she mixed this up, made her own remedy. And you used to go to the store and get this liniment, but you can't get it no more. Went off the shelf. See? Yes, sir.
So a lot of people made their own.
Yes. Now the old people. I got a bottle here now my father used to use.
wow. What is that?
Smell it.
Ooh.
It's for aches, rheumatism, and things like that. Yep, he made that. See, it's got some kind of a. I think it's
What they
mothball,
use?
mothball, and liniment, some kind of liniment, different kinds of oil, and different things, and it's wonderful, wonderful. I forget what's there.
So really, people didn't really go to
No,
drugstores. They got their own. They
no.
make their own.
They made their own medicine. Yes, sir. You didn't hear as many people sick there are now. Least little thing, go to emergency. Go to the emergency. Honest. I'm so,
Make your own medicine. Huh?
I'm so fed up with this. You have all this insurance, and what does it amount to? You got to pay just the same. You know. I said I have all this insurance, and what I don't need it. It's nobody but me.
Right.
You see what I mean? And yet you pay. You have to pay. They're supposed to pay, yet you pay.
Was there an insurance back in the 30s? I mean, could you buy insurance?
Oh yes. I had insurance when I come up here. The Home Friendly used to be the Home Friendly. I still belong to it. I don't know what I'm holding on to it for, because I've never gone back there to live. So Home Friendly and the People's, the Metropolitan. Oh Lord, you name it. And I have it.
So that's our first clip. And we're going to ask Tiffany and Quintin if they would like to comment on some of the things that Ms. Parker was saying. And if I could just say real quick, of all the interviewees, that woman's voice is the sweetest. And also, I haven't heard the for a long time. So it's good to hear it again. So if either of you would like to comment, please go ahead.
I thought it was interesting how she was talking about, when people were ill back then, they had their remedies, and how at that time she was noticing the gimmick of everyone just go to the hospital, and how she was noticing it's like a racket, a racketeer making money. And that is what we're dealing with today. We have holistic approaches, and as we know, Big Pharma wants us to just fulfill our prescriptions that they want us to take their meds. So it's kind of interesting of how that path was starting then and what we are dealing with today. I thought that was interesting. Everything is go to the hospital, because that's what we do now, unfortunately. And it was just interesting how, the equipment that they used back then to store their food, and just in general what they would use to survive on a daily basis, and how it's just the way she talked, it seemed like everyone was so comfortable back then, and just relaxing and enjoying life, not as chaotic as we are today. I thought that was interesting.
Realize I'm muted. Thank you, Tiffany.
What resonated with me was, speaking about all the houses that were torn down, and talking about Chapel Street.
Yes.
And then saying my grandma had mad kids. So, and it's interesting. Yeah, that was interesting.
It was, right? Especially like
because it started with the boys, and then my mom and my aunt Leslie came, so that was interesting to see.
Thank you. I have a comment from Elena Mosley. She said, Mrs. Parker was one of the mothers of State Street AME Zion Church. She was very sweet and would always come to my pew after church to see my babies.
Oh,
I believe that.
and isn't it interesting that for me, like throughout the generations, we always curious to know like how many Black families own houses in the area, or even in general, how many Black families lived in the area. And it's just, Black people, we love each other. We grow up together, and we consider everyone as family. But it's so amazing throughout the generations how they keep Black families in certain areas, and even till today.
Yes, thank you both. So we're going to go to the second clip. The interviewee is Helen Dago. She was interviewed on October 7th, 1988 by Marcella Beagle. And Helen Dago was a lifelong Hudson resident, and she was also a trustee of Olana for many years. So we'll go to that clip now.
Now, you've also had some other fascinating experiences. I believe you mentioned that you went to the University of Ghana.
Yes, that's right. Yes. I have always had an interest in my roots, and being northern born, 3 generations, I received only education about my European ancestors. And incidentally, my grandfather was half British. My grandfather Williams.
Yes, the one who served in the Civil War.
Right. Yes. And so I decided to go to Africa and learn something about my African roots, as I had hoped to go to the University of Arizona and learn something about my Native American roots, but I didn't get there. But it was an interesting experience in Africa. As I say, it was in Accra, Ghana. And we had lectures. And my interest, there were 3 interests really, but my pursuit was in history and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And the emphasis, though, was on Africa for the Africans.
Mm-hmm.
We did make many field trips, and we went to the Cape Coast in Elmina, and that was where the Native Africans were captured, and well, after they were captured, they were taken to these places. And Cape Coast, it was really something to see how the people were herded into a place that was completely dark, no daylight whatsoever. And we went into it. It was in this particular place was a steep incline, and once the people were there, they never saw the light of day again until they got to this country or wherever they were being taken.
What a
And
terrifying
it was a
experience.
terrifying, and yet still
Yes.
it was strange. It was really
Yeah.
strange. And at that time, there were prisoners, political prisoners there at Elmina, Cape Coast. And they were laughing, and the children were playing, and it wasn't too many miles away from the surf.
Mm.
And as I say, a few of us went down into that area,
Yes.
and the walls were covered with bats. It was really nightmarish.
My heavens.
And it was total darkness, and we had either matches or flashlights.
Yes.
And it was there that the prisoners were taken and put in the hold of the ship, packed in like sardines. And of course, only the sturdiest, the healthiest, and those with the will to live made it through this terrible ordeal and came
You
to
can
this
see
country
why.
as slaves. Yeah.
This was literally a room or an expanse that was almost dug into the ground.
Yes, yes, yes.
My heavens.
It was first a courtyard, and there was also a dungeon, and there was a stone block where if the slaves objected, well, I should then call them captured Africans. If they objected too strenuously, their heads were cut off. We could see the scars on the stone chopping blocks, actually.
Great Scott.
It was really a nightmarish experience.
The did you get any indication, were some of them taken just males, females, or families? Did they have any records to tell you whether or not they were just men or women, or
They
a
were
whole
men,
family could go?
women. They didn't have a choice. It was just a matter of, say for instance, a youngster, a good sturdy young boy, 13 or 14, was out with his friends in the forest,
Yeah.
jungle,
Yeah.
and the other Africans would capture them for the white man.
I see.
They did not do the capturing, and they would really abduct them.
Yes.
And take them to the white man's camp, and they're from there. And the same way with the young men. I mean, they chose naturally only young, healthy specimens, as they say.
Yes.
Both male and female. And that's how they were captured.
I see. I never
They
knew
really
that
kidnapped
before.
them. They actually kidnapped them.
Yeah.
No one went willingly, naturally.
No.
And to learn of the empires of Africa and the advancement, they really were so far advanced than the Europeans. And most of their visible culture was taken by the Europeans, who plundered. Right now, in many of the museums in England and Belgium and, various countries, Portugal and all, they're the ones who have much of the cultural objects that they created.
All right, so that was Helen Dago. And Tiffany and Quintin, would you like to comment on that? It's very intense history that she actually went back and saw and was affected by.
As we are still affected today, with all the seriousness and the strength that she talked about. It was interesting how she recognized, and I think, in my opinion, she wanted the interviewer to recognize that our people were captured. They were not grabbed as slaves. They were not taken as slaves. They did not, willingly come as slaves. They were captured. And I thought that was very important to recognize that.
Yeah, it's just it's so great to hear that she was able to get back. And for me, I'm just like, how? Like how, right? Like someone like, I don't know if where were you working? Like who was in your, sphere of influence? Like how, like all of those things that show up for me. Like, and for her to be able to get there, that's my dream, to get home.
Her strength is amazing, and you hear it in her voice and how she talks about the past. That's the strength that we as people of color thrive off of from our ancestors.
Yeah, thank you. And I was thinking about what Tiffany said too, about how she referred to the people and corrected herself. They're not slaves, they're captured persons. And that's like very modern day language to speak like that. And I wasn't aware of it, certainly in the 1980s, but there were people that were, and she was so aware of those people as humans, of course. But, just there was a lot in this project that you'll see. In the 1980s, people knew these things, and they're just now coming to the forefront now. So the third clip is Annie Pedden, and it is from February 1st, 1989. She was interviewed by Otelia Rainier. Ms. Pedden was past president of the local chapter of the NAACP in the Hudson area.
Now, thank you. And we're going to hear from Ms. Peden now. See what
I'd like to hear from her, because this
she had
lady, I believe, has got a lot to say.
And Peden, she's the president of NAACP, And we are very happy to have her with us this afternoon. She really just dropped in, but this is a very convenient and grandizing way to bring her in on it, and I'm very glad to have her.
I was just listening to what the gentleman was saying concerning the churches. This has to be something in my thinking of the individual themselves. Because being a person that came from the South, and some of the things that we had to encounter in the South, because the people of the white race, they was very open to us as how they felt.
People of
They
white
felt that
race.
they was above us.
Yeah.
And in their eyesight, we wasn't even as much as a dog, because they would permit their dog to sit in the front seat of their car when they put us in the back of their car. But still, we could take care of their children. We could prepare their food. We could clean their house. And the people who has made this change, it is because they has looked at themselves and say, what am I doing? And even like me being a Southerner, when the breakdown first began there in Alabama, there was a black girl trying to get into a white university. And the people had all kinds of reasons as to why that this girl shouldn't be allowed to go. This is when segregation was first discussed, being broken down in the schools. And the people that I was working with, the lady said to me, what do you think about this? And I said, one thing that I think about, what's wrong with her going to school? I said, now you have me here. You cooking your food, fixing your food. I clean your house. I take care of your child. When you get ready to go to New York, California, anywhere, I said, you leave me here in your house, along with your husband. So she taking a look at what I was saying. She said, you know, you got a point there. I said, so what? I said, now, I cooked your food. When you get ready to take me downtown, I have to sit in the back seat of your car. And any of this black came off on you. So something has to be done with the individual. We can't take the church as a whole. Here's a lot of people's a member of the church that I belong to. We believe in equal rights. There are a lot of people, such as you, in the church you belong to. They believe in equal rights. Some they have not seen that we are two human beings with different colors of skin. Right. Because where we came from? We came from Adam and Eve. That's right. So we gotta be sisters and brothers.
So that was, I said her name wrong earlier. Ellen Peden is how it was pronounced. And Tiffany and Quintin, would you like to comment on that clip?
Well, it's interesting how the point that she made is something that we still bring up today. And I liked how she, when she spoke about her example, and she said, you know, how they had to tell themselves, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? You know, and to stop the roles that we were placed in back then, and what are we doing? And today we call that being woke. You know, and it's a sad feeling, you know, to know what was going on then continues today, but you can hear the strength in her voice throughout all those struggles, you know, and it's terrible, you know. You can trust me to be alone with your husband. You can trust me to be alone in your home. You can trust me to take care of your children, even cook the food that you devour. but yet and still, the dog gets treated better. And it's sad and disgusting, you know, and unfortunately, you know, it's a part of all of our history. It's about what the other folks did to us and how we handled it. And, you know, for me as a woman of color, you know, that is my example of strength for me to deal with what I'm dealing today. You know, that strength is what keeps us motivated and keeps our head above water.
Thank you for that. And Quintin, did you have any comments on this?
It's just very emotional for me. These weren't, I just sitting here thinking about my mom, because those people, that's my Peden and my Rainer, these are people who raised me in Shiloh Baptist Church. These aren't random people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who every Sunday my mom went to their house or what have you. I had to go up there and clean my Rainer's house. My Peden took me all over the place. It's just grateful to be able to see them in this moment.
Well, thank you for that.
It was also interesting how when she was making her point, she made sure that the person behind the camera, the interviewer, understood as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she said, you know, we go to church and we are, you know, of that one person of color, and you go to church and you have that feeling, and you know, we're supposed to be under the same roof, but we're continuous generation after generation. We are extremely divided.
Right.
So I like that, you know, yeah, you're interviewing me, but this has to do with you too.
Thank you. I also wanted to read Elena Mosley's comment. It's about Helen Dago from the last clip. Helen's family invited me to her home on Spring Street. She gifted me Helen's book, material and letter openers from Ghana. So it just brings home that this is Hudson based. These were our neighbors or had been in the past. The fourth clip is James Kerr. He was interviewed on February 1st, 1989, and he was in the same session that Annie Peden was interviewed in. She actually came by to visit Otelia Rayner. And so Mr. Kerr was a lifelong Hudson resident and a neighbor of Mrs. Rainier. So we're going to hear that clip now.
Like I said, I went in the service in 1953. When I came back in 57, this community had changed because the few people, Negro families I had mentioned, and the few that I have been trying to bring back into my mind, there was not a vast Negro population in the city of Hudson. And in fact, you'll find, if you talk to my wife, that there was only one Negro woman in the town of Stottville. She was a maid. Now, I do not know her name. The Negroes were not accepted into Stottville in those years ago. This is fact.
Was she a Hudson woman or?
This I never found out from my wife. All I know is she was a maid for one rich family out there. I can remember my father-in-law saying that when he was growing up, that there used to be cross burnings out there in Stottville.
So they've always had the Ku Klux Klans around here too?
You had a Ku Klux Klan type thing in this area. But in the city of Hudson, it was a little different. It was in the sense that people were accepted. But I can give you another fact. As I was growing up, from the time I was about 14, I worked after school. I come from a poor family, and I worked for Lipschutz Grocery. I worked for Richmond's store, which burned down about 3 times. I worked for Marcus Fabrics, and I worked for the community theater. Now, if anybody asked me, where did any of your Negro friends work that you grew up with, I couldn't tell you.
Oh, I see.
Because
they didn't work where you were.
none of the stores, all the stores in the city of Hudson were owned either by the majority, either by the Jewish or the Italian people. Now, where the younger Negro generation worked, I have no idea. Now, this is the odd thing, is I had a communication. And then, if you go forward in time, about 1970, and in fact, there was some, every once in a while, Mrs. Rainier could probably tell you this, there would be small amounts of racial disturbance at Hudson High School.
Yes, we know
And it got to a point where at one time, and this is the first time, now this is another odd thing, in all the years of growing up, I never knew, or can I remember, a Negro minister. Yeah, I knew there was a white Negro church on Columbia Street, and that was the only Negro church I remembered. At the time when I was growing up, and what became the Shiloh Baptist, if I'm correct, down on Warren Street, was originally a Jewish synagogue.
it was. But it moved from this church on Columbia Street.
Right.
That's the church that moved down there.
But the only church that I knew, Negro church that I knew of, was a little white one on Columbia Street. And like I said, that is about what I remember there. But in the 70s, I turned around and there was disturbance, and all of a sudden there was about, I guess, 500 or 600 people were going to hold a meeting up to the school to figure this thing out. There was a projection that the Black Panthers were in the area. Reverend Nixon was preaching in the area at the time. He was at the meeting. I'm just a regular member of the community. I turned around, I went to the meeting, and Reverend Nixon got up, and he was trying to stress a point. Why don't we have some of the Negro community into the educational and political system? I think he was trying to bring things forward. And so I made a statement to him, and I said, well, I've had my hand raised for about 15 minutes and they wouldn't let me talk. So finally I just turned around and I came out and I said, look, I've stood here for 15 minutes, are you going to give me a chance to speak? They gave me a chance to speak. I looked over and I asked if there was any members of the Board of Education. They said yes. And I said, have you ever had any members, Negro people on the Board of Education? Everything went blank. And Bessie Cobbin stood up. She turns around. She says, Jim Kerr. She says, I knew it had to be you. And so anyway, they were going to take pictures and things afterwards. And I turned around and I said to look down towards Reverend Nixon. And I said, I'll come down after this is over with. I'll shake hands. And I'm going to walk out the door. And you people can make a decision. I said, but I don't think you need the Black Panthers here. And I don't think that they're here because the community wanted them here. I think they were here because they were an organization that was trying to protect, in a sense, many Negro communities across the nation. I eventually did find out that one of the members of the Black Panthers is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which I am a member. What his name is. At this particular moment, I can't remember, but I was told this.
Okay, so there's a lot in that clip, obviously. Tiffany, would you like to comment?
Well, it was interesting listening to him speak. I have to put myself back in those times because I was disturbed every time he said the Negro and Negro and white Negro church. And it was just like a little disturbing for me. But it was just interesting how, I don't think we played the entire clip, but it was interesting how he was very calm about, KKKs being in the area. And then later on discussing Black Panthers coming to the area, he stated in his comment that it was unnecessary for them to be here. And I find that a little disturbing because, as we all know, maybe some of you don't, Black Panthers stood to be our backbone and our strength to show no fear of what was, put upon us. And for the Black Panthers to come to the city of Hudson, that means something. That means something very disturbing was going on out here, quietly, secretly, but enough that the Black Panthers knew that they needed their presence here in the city of Hudson. What also interests me with this is that he was so comfortable, James Kerr, to say how the KKKs were here. But nobody discussed that in this city. Everybody pretends it's in the cemetery, so to speak. And if we have people today that can say, yes, my grandfather was a part of the Black Panthers, my great-grandfather, my uncles. So we know that there are family members of the KKKs still in the city of Hudson. And it's interesting how the circle continues. It may not wear the white sheets, but the circle continues. So it's just interesting how that part of that subject in the city relevantly today is quiet, but we know that it exists. That part stood out for me the most.
Thank you. And Quintin, would you like to comment on the clip?
It's just confirmation. To Kim's point, the second Sunday of every November is the Shiloh Church anniversary. They read their whole history and every little piece to it. So she had a comment there. In terms of my mom kept me very informed. So there was a race war. And people who we know like Dank and Bimbo and Harvey James and all them, they all walked the Black women to school and back and forth to class. There was violence, I can't get really deep into it just out of respect, but some of those folks are around. Some of those folks became high power public officials who were a part of that race riot. And y'all shouldn't be surprised, y'all know Hudson. But yeah, so that definitely struck a note because my mom told me about it and told me how it was a breaking point for race relations in the area.
Thank you very much. We're going to go on to the fifth clip, and that is with Ed Cross. Ed Columbus Cross Jr., and he was interviewed on February 9th, 1987 by Grace Schwartzman. Mr. Cross was born in North Carolina, but lived in Hudson most of his life. He was a member of the Shiloh Baptist Church and the Hudson Masonic Lodge.
Mr.
Mr. Cross, thank you so much for agreeing to share some of your memories, your early memories with us. You're sitting next to your mother-in-law. When you work, first about your name, that's Edward Columbus Cross. Is there a story about how you got the middle name?
Not that I know, sir. I don't know.
Okay.
I never heard him say anything about why.
Where did you work when you came here?
When I first come here, I worked at Bristman Brickyard, right over the hill here. Bristman Brickyard. They had an open yard there at that time. And I didn't work long because they had a dump yard, bricks out on the yard. It wasn't in a shed. And come a rain, we had to stop and nothing to do. Well, the next Sunday after I was here, this Sunday, the next Sunday another crew come up. Then, when there was work to do, they wouldn't let the first crew work, and we had to go hang around. And still, we had to pay our transportation too, you know, when we made enough to do it.
And you had to come down anyway, whether you
had to come down to breakfast and go out to the shed where they worked at. And after you put everybody.
Why do you think they did that they hired the other crew and not you?
Well, they had us tied. They had us tied because when I left Baltimore, my uncle told me I couldn't take anything to dress up in, come prepared to work. So you was tied.
So, but you were living here when you were working.
I was living on the yard.
On the yard.
Right down in the hill.
Okay. And when you couldn't work there, what jobs did you find?
Well, after 3 weeks we done that, we decided we'd come into Hudson. And so we come into Hudson, and we went to the cement plant here in Hudson. And couldn't get no job there. It was filled. Then I went to the other cement plant, and the man hired me there. I worked there 2 years and a half, a little better, and they had shut down, and after that I was out of a job again. So, okay, I started looking for work. I went over Greenport, where they were building houses. It was in the spring of the year, and I couldn't get no job there. Come across, right straight across where the farmer's home is, down to the brickyard again. And when I went to the brickyard that time, they had a closed-in yard. You work inside. So I went there for a job. They hired me. They hired me in the coal dust department, sand, where you send up where they make the bricks. Well, I worked my way up from sandman to pallet man, working inside there. After I worked so long as a pallet man, I had learned how to rack, and so I got a job racking. And I racked bricks until the Depression set in and they closed the yard. Then I was out again. But I wasn't off too long. I got a job on the railroad, and I worked on the railroad a while. And it was too hot in the summertime for me and too cold in the wintertime. So I worked one winter, and I made it all right. So the next winter, I quit. I quit because it was cold. And I didn't know, when I started looking for a job again, I went across to Avon and walking over that way looking for a job over there. Went on the side of Catskill, 12 o'clock come. Thought to myself, I better turn and go back to Hudson. I did. Come back to Hudson. And when I got back to Hudson, I had worked the Atlas cement plant for a while. And when I come back to Hudson from the tour over to across Catskill, I was told that my foreman had left word for me to come back to work on the river. Well, at that time we was loading boats, and so I loaded boats for a good while. Things was kind of slow, and they would let us work through from March up until October. And
Is that longshoreman work?
that's right.
So you did bricks and you did
No, that was cement then.
cement.
Cement.
But first
I
you
done
worked
left the
with bricks.
brickyard. I got
Right.
all that told up.
Right. First you did bricks, then cement, then longshore.
That's right. Well, during
And
that
you weren't married yet, were you? When you were a longshoreman, you weren't married yet.
no. So I wanted to work, and so I got laid off, and I went back to brickyard again. But this time I went to the yard where Mom's father was working. I went there and I got a job there, and they had me in the clay pit, and we had to pull something out of the clay pit, you know. So I didn't like that job, and I quit. Walked to Hudson from Greenville up there, Stockport. Walked back to Hudson. Well, that went on for a while. So the next time I went back to the brickyard, the cement plant, I stayed. And that was but
It was after 1932 was the Depression, right?
That's right. That's right.
You were very independent. When it was too cold, when it was too cold, you left the job, and when you didn't like the clay pits, you left, and you always seemed to find another job.
That's right. The job was plentiful then. You know, when there was a lot of work if you wanted to do it.
Right.
But
not construction. You didn't want to get into that?
I never did go construction.
Okay, what was the last job you had that you worked at the longest?
The Lone Star Cement Company. Lone Star. I worked there. Well, during the time I was working longshoreman, that was Lone Star too, but it was working on longshoreman. I wasn't working up there.
When you were living in Hudson, tell us about some of the people that lived near you and what were they like?
Well, they was nice and Christian people. And, when you're young, there's a lot of things that you do. I haven't been good all my days either during that time, We used to throw at people and like that, But I made out to behave myself because my mother and my father taught me to do right.
Were you up here with your family?
I was here by myself.
By yourself?
I didn't have no sister,
so where does
no
a single
brother.
person go to live?
Beg pardon?
Where does a single person live when he's working? Did you share a place?
I rented.
You rented?
Room. Yeah, that's what I said.
So you had other single friends, people who
That's right.
who lived near you.
That's right. Yeah, they was nice.
Okay, when did you meet your wife? Vernon's mother.
don't remember the year. I don't remember the year.
How long you married?
They fine?
Yeah. How long have you been married?
You see yourself,
40?
Can't concentrate now.
Well, after working at the cement, do you still work in the cement yard after you got married? When the children were born? You kept at that?
Well, Edward was born. I was working at cement plant. And some of the rest of them, I don't know how many. But I was working at cement plant when most of them was born. Yeah, because I was working at the Lone Star. Yes, when all of them was born, I was working at the Lone Star. And
when did you stop?
When they laid me off for good was October the 31st, 1967.
You remember that day?
That's right, because I've been retired since that time on my own. If I worked, then I worked on my own. So
was the company good to you after all those years of work?
No, ma'am.
No.
Some nights I come home from work and I lay in the bed thinking how I was treated. And I was glad when I was laid off.
Was it because you were discriminated against, you think? What were the bad conditions?
No, I don't know how to word that because see, I worked and they had some fellows around me, they just throwed off, and doesn't see the boss coming. I've had my fellow workers to come and try to take the shovel out of my hand because they didn't have nothing when the boss was coming. See? And the reason I said that the bosses wasn't fair because I'm working and here's a bunch isn't learning anything and he come to me and tell me go clean this spill up and this and that, and I was already cleaning up. So but I toughed it out.
Yeah. So, was there a union when you were there?
During the time that I'm talking, yes, there was a union during that time. Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
But,
do you miss not working? Or do you miss working?
Do I miss? Now I do. I do.
How do you keep busy now?
Walking the street. Walking the street. That's right. There's a lot of time I wish that I could get something to do because it's hard walking. People say, don't walk. Why are you walking so much now? Exercising the legs. That's right.
Is there something that you feel you could still do, like teaching younger children something with your experience? Or you're not interested in that? Any kind of volunteer work that you'd like to do?
Well, there's a lot of cleaning up lights and things that I would like. Look, I don't want to say work 40 hours a week or nothing like that, 4 hours a day or something like that. And that's not because.
Over the years, what political events in our government happened that you were most interested in? That you took a position in? Things that happened in politics. Were you all interested in that?
Yes, I was because I used to work with the politicians on election day because I used to quit my job and work for a politician. And
on election day, a poll watcher. You used to watch the polls.
That's right. That's right. Watch the polls. And I have worked into the place where people go in the booths. I used to stand there and work there too. I liked it when I first saw it, but it come to the place that I didn't care for it.
When Vernon was a young boy, did you think that he had the qualities to become a minister?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Are you happy that he is?
Am I happy? Hey, Lord. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah.
Well, that's
Yes,
all.
I'm happy. Yeah. Yes, I am.
That he is a minister.
Yeah.
All right. So that was beautiful and a wonderful way for us to have the last clip. I think people are very affected by Ed Cross. I'll read some of the comments from before and then ask Tiffany and Quintin to speak. Stephanie spoke about one of the earlier clips. It's also deep to see how different the perspective of white Hudson residents is, so different from Black residents, like two worlds, as has been said. And William commented, they don't call themselves KKK, but White Lives Matter crazies are active in Columbia County today. And then there were people who wrote very affectingly about Mr. Cross's clip. Mr. Cross's, this is from Cheryl. Mr. Cross's silences convey much about the discrimination Black people faced. Suzanne said yes to the meaningful silences. And Pamela said, thinking about the walking between home and work in all seasons is quite something. And there's some comments about the Brickyard contract workers, which were answered by someone who's on our Zoom today. Lisa Smith of the African American Archive of Columbia County is here and gave answer to that. And I also asked her to put in her website, and she's done that in the chat, so you can get that there. All right, so Tiffany, would you like to speak?
I loved how Ed Cross was so dapper in his suit and so calm. It just showed his strength, and no matter his situations, even though we can see it in his eyes, and he didn't have to go into too much detail, but he picked himself up and made sure he had a source of income coming in before his family and during his family. And it speaks a lot if you looked in his eyes when he spoke about how he was mistreated and how he would lay in his bed and reflect on that, but still found the strength to get up and quit that job and get another job. And I can just imagine, did those type of dealings that he went through and just walking in this area, especially back then with the snow being worse than what it is today. And he made it happen. He made it work, and he created a beautiful family that, we see Quintin Cross as a part of it. And I can speak to that effect. Quintin likes to walk just as much as his great uncle. So it was for me, it was beautiful to see and listen to his experience and the way he survived in Hudson.
Thank you so much. Quintin, would you like to speak?
Yeah.
A lot.
That's sort of powerful. Oh. That's my pop-up. And yeah. I probably was running around in that house too.
Mm. There's some pictures of you as a very young man in the collection, just so you know.
Yeah, he was a dapper guy. He was well respected by the people in the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all I can say is he went through so we could get through. Because now I'm not quiet at all, not even close. And we're out here giving people jobs. So the legacy through is very important.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful thing. The things that affected him so much, you're now helping people with. It's tremendous.
I love how excited he was about his son being a minister. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that was really cool.
He's like, excuse me? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our final clip. We're going to open it up for people to speak, and you can either put things in the chat or use the raise hand feature. But I really want to thank Quintin Cross and Tiffany Gerriga. Thank you so much for the comments, for being on this panel. And most of all, I think now that this evening is coming to an end and we've heard just 5 tiny clips from these interviews, thank you for making sure that those voices will be heard. They were there in a basement, and you too and Emily saw that they needed to be known by the world, and now they can be. So it's very moving to think that, you know, these voices could have been silenced, but they're not going to be. So thank you so much for everything that you've done. We want to thank everyone who is attending tonight, and I'll note an upcoming event that we're having for the local history series, and then we'll open it up for comments, and I'll read any of your comments that are in the chat.
See, when I grew up in Hudson, I was a young man. I was born in 54, and I lived on North Front and West State was our section of Hudson. And I grew up in an area where we didn't see prejudice because we had all different nationalities there. We had African American, we had Irish, we had Jewish, we had Polish, and we all were one big family. And I always tell people, whether they want to believe it or not, that was the best area in all Hudson. You had the Hugheses, you had the Carr family, you had Bernice. She had a little place up on the corner, if anybody remember Bernice's little house. And that, so it was hard for me to understand this until just recently, that I've been going to different archives of different areas, the Philadelphia thing and a couple of the others. But I didn't know so much that people were so prejudiced. And I don't know why. I must have been blind to it. It's very overwhelming for me to see this.
Well, you know, for me, you know, listening to what you were saying just now, we hear that a lot, and in my opinion, it's like, you know, you grew up in your household and you all were comfortable, and you didn't have to think about these things. This is something. It's not a subject matter that just entered the city of Hudson. This is something that's been going on, you know, before people moved to Hudson. And people, from my understanding, people of color moved from the South up to the North looking for a better life and better jobs, and then come to find out what they left behind is what they're facing up here in the North. You know, it may be more spacious with different people and jobs, but the issues still remain the same. So you may have had people of color that welcomed you into their homes and, you know, gave you a plate of food or some snacks or a slice of cake, but it wasn't the same, you know, for people of color to enter, not saying your home, but a white person's home. You know, that level of comfort was never there. You know, and I'm not speaking of all people of color, I'm speaking from my experience and what I know. But, you know, when we enter a white person's home, we would stand out of mannerism and wait till you tell us to be seated, opposed to you see other kids going into the home and they're just comfortable and they can sit, and you're like, wait a minute, you can't sit there. You know, it's a difference of how you grew up and your surroundings. So it's wonderful you didn't get to experience that till now, but imagine the people who you grew up with that did experience it. And if they're still alive, I would encourage you to reach out to them and talk to them and see that gap that you were missing from that time of growing up.
Yeah, and they never, nobody ever talked about it. That's the wildest thing about it, because no one, because growing up on Front, like I said, Front and State, because we were all family, we did, like, if your mother yelled at us or my mother yelled, we all get in trouble because you're not supposed to be doing that. So we never had that difference in nationalities and stuff like that, you know. So that was hard for me. And then when I left and then I went in the service and that, I didn't see it in the service, but it might have been there also. Maybe my eyes were blind to it. I don't know. And that, but growing up, I didn't have that problem. I said Bimbo, which is James Williams, Popeye, which is Kevin Coleman. We all grew up. We played together. Harold Holloway, all of us in that. And to understand it now really overwhelms me, because maybe I could have done more later on in my life to try to change people's personalities.
Well,
And
guess
that
what?
I said when I worked, yeah,
You still
yeah,
can.
when I worked for CAS, when I got out of the military, CAS would not hire minorities. It just wasn't black. They only hired white people. So I went to Color Association and explained to them why this was happening when my friend couldn't get a job there. So this is what they said to me. This is no lie. They said, "You're a white person by your voice." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, why are you worrying about it for?" And that's what they said to me. And that overwhelmed me more, because that was injustice, because everybody deserves a job. And like Mr. Cross, that was an awesome interview. That touched my heart twice over. I ain't talking no more. I talk too much anyway.
Well, like I was saying, Mr. Leo, it's never too late, because we still suffer from the same things that happened then today. And you're in a position where you lived through those generations and have experience with relationships with people of color. And now that you know and have an understanding of, wow, I didn't see what was going on then, but I can feel it and it disturbs me now. You have the power to talk about that to your family and the generations out here, to bring that knowledge of what needs to be changed today, because it continues from yesterday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. And Stephanie commented, white folks don't talk about racism because we don't experience it. We have to learn how to see it and unlearn how to behave in it. So
I agree.
Yeah. And Lisa Smith has her hand raised.
Yeah, I would actually first like to just say thank you for this. It's really pretty awesome. My personal family, my mother's family has been in Columbia County since the 1700s, and my father's family came up from the South in the 20s and 30s. So I have both sides of that, and it was really actually very interesting to hear from people who had been here for a long time, as well as people who came up from the South. So I just wanted to say thank you. And if I could just comment to what Leo was saying, I think it's there's an interesting thing that happens in the North. There seems to have been like enclaves of areas where there was entire integration. I know that my mom was born in the 40s, and she grew up in Albany, and she will talk all the time about how, like, on her block there were Italians and there were Jews and there were blacks, and there was, like, everyone was there and everyone was friends, and like they didn't really, none of them, my mom obviously is black, so like, she would have been aware of it, but there wasn't in those groups, there really was not a lot of, in those neighborhoods, there was not a lot of racism in her experience. Everyone kind of lived together. And so, like, when she left and went out to the quote unquote real world, that's where she started to see more of that. But I do think that there are enclaves, there are areas in the North where that just, it wasn't the stereotypical racism that we see in a lot of other places. So just to Leo, I understand your perspective and your upbringing, because it's exactly what I hear from my mom.
Thank you, Lisa. So, and I see Kathleen has her hand raised also.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone, especially Quintin and Tiffany, for letting us experience some of this. It's really a huge privilege. And the only thing I wanted to point out is I went to Hudson High School. I graduated from Hudson High School. I came here when I was about 10 years old. And, you know, I really love the Hudson community. But one thing that struck me about these interviews is that I don't remember learning any of this in school. You know, there was our choir sang at Shiloh Baptist once a year, and it was truly a really an amazing experience. But we learned so little in the public school system about our local history. I heard about Henry Hudson so many times, and he didn't even land in Hudson. You know, there's a plaque where royalty stayed in Hudson, but you don't see the same sort of care for the Black community when it comes to our history. And it just really struck me. So thanks.
Thank you for that. And I'll just say that in the 1980s, when this project was done, remember we talked about this in the introduction, the curriculum guide was created. Copies were made, printed, and offered to the Hudson City School District. And my understanding is they were never used. And this is all information exactly from the archives that were gathered. And it was for that purpose that they were doing it. They wanted people to be educated. So thank you, Kathleen, because that really brings it home. It could have been. And we've had educators that are working with the New York State Archives look at that curriculum guide and say, still today, it's a very good guide. And I think Lisa Smith might have also gotten a copy of it and been able to look at it. It's tremendous. So that information is there and it can still be used in the school district. So Quintin, Tiffany, Emily, would any of you like to say anything more before we finish? Yeah, Lisa said it's a great curriculum. Sorry, Quintin.
Yeah, it's fine. I just want to thank Emily from the library for helping to make this happen. It was a long road. It was a long road. It wasn't easy. I'm gonna be nice today, and just thank you. Just thank you. My grandfather came in God was born in 1908. And he came here, and I'm like, I see the comments about the brickyard, and I'm like, and then I know some of my grandmother's stories. So, and I know there was a brickyard in Newton Hook. That's probably where he met my grandmother, because her aunt had a boarding house in Newton Hook. So, trying to put all those pieces together, and to know, like, I'm grateful that his family has a family reunion, right? Like a lot of folks don't, right? A lot of people don't know that history. And I was able to meet his remaining brothers and sisters when he passed, right? He never went back home. And I'm just grateful, you know, 6 generations here now. I'm just grateful for the legacy that is being left. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And thank you for sharing your feeling about your family too. It's tremendous. It's great to see.
I would like to thank you for asking me to be a part of this project. For me personally, I love looking at old documentaries of, you know, how things used to be, how things still remain the same. I like looking at the fabrics, the clothing, the hairstyles, you know, that's just who I am. I'm an only child, and you know, I lived and was raised by my great grandmother, you know, and she lived to 109. So I love doing things like this and being able to speak on it with my experience. It's it's very informative and educational what we're doing, and I hope that we all take what we learned today and spread the news in a positive way to get a positive response to a positive future. There's racism, as we know, and through the comments, it still remains in Columbia County and the city of Hudson. And for me personally, I haven't experienced that type of racism until I moved to the city of Hudson. So it's really unfortunate, and this is something that I don't want my children, to feel, or grandchildren to feel. And we have to stop it. We have to stop it some way, somehow. It happened, and we have to say it's not going to continue. And learning through these documentaries, I think it's a possibility that we can do that, because you get to learn from your mistakes when you didn't know it was a mistake.
Right. Thank you. And thank you all so much. Michael had a comment. I'm hearing a distinction between how people experience relationships across race in a neighborhood versus who has access to jobs or other pathways to opportunities, such as bank loans or GI scholarships, definitely. And Quintin, Lisa Smith would like to talk to you more about Newton Hook, because that's where her family's from. So I can introduce you if you'd like. And, oh, you already said absolutely in the chat, never mind. And Stephanie wants to know if the curriculum is available. And I believe, yes, we can make it available to you. She works in the out of school time. So thank you all so much. Please do make an appointment. You can email history@hudsonarealibrary.org to look at the archives. And soon our website will be up, and you'll be able to hear all of these wonderful people and history and their lives. It's just, there's so much there that we keep discovering every day. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Emily, Quintin, and Tiffany, for making this possible.